Hello, hello. I hope you're having a lovely day. It is Sunday here. I'm back in Devon and I am going to have a little creative day. And this is something that I have been meaning to do for ages and something I wanted to talk to you a little bit about today, which is how we overcome blocks in motivation as creators and makers. So, I have been meaning, well, I've been intending, I've had it in my diary every week for, gosh, this has been like a few months now. I've been saying, I'm going to have one day a week that I set aside to making jewellery, to working on my new collections. I'm going to do it. I've told people this, I've put it in my diary. I really thought I was making myself accountable. And have I done it? No. I have always managed to find some reason or other not to sit down and start making, which probably sounds ridiculous, or maybe it doesn't, because actually I was talking to a friend of mine about this, and she also creates and makes things, makes art. And we both realised that actually this is something that a lot of us artists and makers have it's an ongoing thing. It's a constant struggle to get over yourself and to get through those hurdles and to sit down in front of that blank piece of paper, blank whatever it is, the desk with all the tools on it, and to actually start making. And yeah, it's something that I think is actually really important as a maker if you want to set up a business. It's yes, okay, you need to have a website and a social media presence and have your marketing all in order. But actually, it's no good having all of that if you're not sitting down and making anything, if you're not actually taking the time to nurture your creativity. So we were just kind of chatting about this, and I was saying how I really keep meaning to do it. I keep meaning to sit down and make, and I just don't know why I'm not. And she was asking me a few questions to kind of delve a bit deeper, like what is it that's stopping you from doing it? What do you think's stopping you? And I was like, well, there's normally something else on my to-do list, or I feel like I need to do this, or la 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 la, coming up with all these random excuses, which in honest truth, I could have, if I really thought about it, I could easily have set them aside, even if just for an hour. It doesn't have to be a whole day, and sit down and actually start making. And when I've really, really thought about it and got down into the nitty gritty, I realised that it's that fear of making a mistake or making something that's rubbish or not creating something amazing and beautiful right off the bat. And it kind of made me chuckle when I realised this because, I've been making jewellery now for a fair few years, and I'm confident in my abilities, and I know that I know how to use silver clay. I know that I know how to kind of make my designs work, and I also know on a kind of level in my brain, I know that if I make a mistake, that's absolutely fine. I can start again. It's really no big deal. But there's still that little unconscious like voice in there saying, you can't make anything that's rubbish, you can't make anything that's rubbish, you can't do it, you're rubbish, la 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 la. It's the old imposter syndrome rearing its ugly head. And I think it's something that, you could be making art for a week, you could be making art for a year, you could be making art for 10 years, 20 years, all your life. We still go through this on a regular basis. For me, it's been going on for a few months now. So I wanted to talk about that today because I think it's really important that we acknowledge that this is something that happens to all of us. And it doesn't mean that you are not capable of making whatever it is that you want to make. It doesn't mean that you're not capable of working on your craft. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. And really, if you want to kind of think about starting a handmade business, the first step is to work on your mindset, really get over those hurdles that are stopping you and put things in place to almost force yourself to sit down and create. And it was funny because both of us did say, once we've got over that initial hurdle of our mindset and we do sit down and start creating and making what it is that we want to create, we get into the flow. I love it. You know, I get into the flow of it. I lose time. I lose all my kind of thoughts and worries and everything. And I'm fully focused on that task. And I know that once I'm in it, I'm in it. I'm going to really love it. I'm going to enjoy it. But it's the getting into it that can sometimes be a little bit of a struggle. So what we decided is to kind of make it as easy as possible for me to get started. And I know that hopefully once I get started, because this is what's happened before, when I get started, I get into the flow, and that will encourage me to keep going on different days as well. So I've kind of set up my workstation, got everything in place ready, so that I've made it as easy for myself as possible to sit down and start making now that I'm ready and I've told myself, right, I'm doing it. Today is the day. So yeah, I would say to you, if you're finding yourself having this kind of block as well, have a think to yourself, what can you do to set in place? What small little things can you do to set in place to get yourself in the mindset and to make it as easy as possible for you to kind of sit down and just start making, just see what happens, just create, even if you're just scribbling on a piece of paper or something like that, just sit down and start. But what do you need to do to make sure you can do that? Another thing I think with me is I tend to, my brain will very much go like 1,000 steps ahead from where I am at the moment. So I've got a new range of jewellery that's been percolating and that I'm researching and designing at the moment. And in my brain, I'm already like hundreds of steps ahead thinking about how I'm going to market it and the manufacturer and la 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 la. Whereas actually, I need to just bring it right back and think, right, I don't even need to spend a whole day making. Let's just sit down for an hour and make the first item from my new range. And let's think of it as a prototype. It doesn't have to be the final piece. This is me trying it out, seeing how it goes, seeing what it's going to look like, and just taking away all of the pressure that I've been put on myself by thinking, oh, it's going to be my great big new reveal, my new range that I can't wait to produce. Let's just take it right back to the very, very basics of one piece of jewellery that I'm going to create, I'm going to put my heart into, that I'm going to enjoy creating. And that, you know, if it doesn't come out exactly as I want it this time, that's great. I've learned something from that. I can hopefully make it better next time and just take away all of the expectation so that I can get back into enjoying the process, because that is when creativity really flows. So here is my somewhat messy and definitely not Pinterest worthy desk setup, which I thought you might like to see as well, because often, you know, on social media, and don't get me wrong, I absolutely love seeing those draw-worthy Pinterest setups of the perfect space for you to be creative. But in reality, for a lot of us, that's just not viable at this time. And this is actually the reason why I love silver clay as well, because you really don't need a lot of space to be able to do it. So this is a standing desk, which I also use, as you can see, it's got the screen on it. I also use when I'm doing my other kind of laptop work. So I just pan over here, you can see I've piled up my laptop and keyboard on top of my my handy boxes where I store all of my bits and bobs. But then, yeah, this is where I have set up my day to start making. I've just pushed everything back so that I can do it. I've also just got this really cool little tripod, which has got a ring light on top of it for filming my videos of me making, which I'm really excited about. So I'm gonna film me making one of these little shells. These are shells that I collected at Bantham, which is a local beach to me. I went out with my sister and got them yesterday, so I'm really excited to make one of them into a pendant using silver clay. Over here, here's my shelves with my tools on it. You can see, again, it's really not a draw-worthy Pinterest shelf, but it totally works for me. It's only recently that I've managed to get myself this organised, so I am feeling quite pleased about that as well. I've got a little candle because I always love to have a candle when I'm making, and a plant. And then I've also got this little sad lamp, which I normally put on around September time, but it's quite helpful because it also works as another natural light source when I'm making videos, so that's quite good as well. So there we have it, my little creative setup. Okay, so time to get making. I am going to show you how to make a mould of a shell. This is, as I said, it's a little one that was my sister yesterday. The shell, she actually found it, and it's really good for making a mould because I don't know if you can see it, but it's not smooth. It's got like quite a lot of rough indents along it, which is what you want, because if you get a smooth shell, it's not going to look as interesting when you use silver clay to kind of create the mold from it. So the first thing we're going to do is use this, which is a molding compound called Siligum. You can get it online and in crafty type shops. So you want to take equal amounts of the white and the blue putty. It is non-toxic as well. Good. And then wish it. Satisfying. Basically, I'm folding it in on itself in order for the white and the blue to completely mould, and so that we are left with a uniform colour which doesn't have any marbling in it. So once you stop seeing marbling and it's gone into this lovely pale blue colour, then ready. So now roll it into a ball. You don't want there to be any cracks or anything like that. Just roll it in between. Pop it down. Very light roll on top to flatten the edge. You don't have to do that. And then you take your shell, think about which side you want to make the mould of. So I'm going to do this one. So you pop it on and you want to press quite firmly down, like so, place it into the moulding compound. The only thing you do want to make sure is that you don't press it down so far that you make a hole underneath, because the point of the shell has actually hit the bottom of your desk. So I did make sure that my piece was quite thick. It was probably a couple of centimeters thick in order to take the depth of the shell. And that's something that the more you practice, you'll get used to knowing how thick you need to make it. And now what you do is you leave it like that. It takes approximately 10 to 15 minutes to dry so that it's hard. You don't take the shell out, you leave it in there. So we're just going to leave it to go dry. So the way I'm going to test to see if it's dry is just by pressing my fingernail into the putty. If it leaves an impression, then it's not quite dry. And if it just bounces back, then it's dry. This is still leaving a very slight impression, so I'm just going to leave it for a couple more minutes. Okay, so if I show you, you can hopefully see that. Just bouncing back and not leaving any indent. So I think that is dry now. You can just pick it up once it's dry and literally pop your shell out. And you're left with a gorgeous pattern inside. Absolutely love. I think this is good. So the next thing to do is I've just got these little pots which has got a little bit of oil in it. I'm going to spray a very small amount of oil into the mould, which helps to ensure that the silver clay pops out easily. You really do not need much at all, so you might want to just spray it onto your finger, or you can spray it straight in. That's too much, so you want to make sure that you kind of rub some of it away, because you don't want it to be too oily. You just want a very light layer. You can use tissue if you want to. Oh, layer there. hands. This is just olive oil. It's quite nice because it means it will stop the silver clay from sticking to your hands too much as well. And here we have silver clay. A lot of people say that they get absolutely terrified when they first open the packet, that they're going to, you know, muck it up and it's going to go wrong. But the joy of silver clay is it is like clay. It's just as malleable as clay, which means that if you do make a mistake, you can literally roll it up and start again, which is brilliant. So I'm just going to take a little bit of this. I don't need anywhere near 20 grams. That's a 20-gram pack. So I've just taken that little bit there. With the rest of this, I'm going to put it in this handy little container got, which ensures that your clay stays moist and dry. It's very clever. You literally just this little sponge is kept moist and it's got these holes in it, and that ensures that the clay stays dry and usable. Moist and usable. So now you've got your piece of clay. You don't want to play with it with your hands for too long because it does take in kind of moisture and then it will start to dry out really, really quickly. So you want to work relatively quickly. If you do find that it starts to dry out, you can use distilled water. I've got another bit of water in here. You just need a very, very tiny little drop which you kind of fold into the clay to re-moisten it. So it's really easy to reuse if it does get dry, which is another amazing thing about silver clay. The only thing you want to make sure you do is don't use too much water because you'll be left with a kind of mess of wet, soggy clay that's not going to be usable for a while. You can use it as a paste, but you want to make sure it's in this lump format. So the first thing you do is take your lump, roll it in between your hands. Want to not really have any, this is to kind of get any air bubbles and cracks, as many out as possible. And I'm popping it on this paper. I'm just going to put a tiny bit of oil onto my bowling pin as well, just to help stop it sticking when I roll it out. And then you want to think about rolling a piece which is going to be big enough to cover your mould. Now you can use cards or specific sized rollers to ensure that you get the correct width, or you can do it by eye like I'm doing. Probably want it, I would say, 3 millimeters deep. So there I've got my piece of silver clay. Then you get your mould there, flip it over and press it in really firmly. Press all around the edges. Ensure that you pick up the lovely pattern. Now, don't worry at this stage if the edges on the very outside aren't neat, because when you come to, once it's dry, you'll sand it down and polish it, and that will get rid of some of the cracks. And another really nifty tip you can do if you want to have a bit of interest on the inside is take your original shell, put a little bit of oil on it. I've just got some that's in my hand. Press that down like so, in order to get a little bit of patterning on the inside as well. And then you literally, with this, you don't leave it in to dry, you pop it out straight away onto my paper. There we have it. You can see it's taken the pattern really nicely. There are a few little bits around the edge which I'll probably want to take off. You don't need to, as I said, worry about it being neat at this stage, but it's handy to get some of, when there's a lot of it, to get some of it off. Roughly, I'm just using a cocktail stick, or you could use a knife. And that also means that you can save this in your pot for later use. And that is how you make a mould from a shell. And if you're interested in going a bit further with this and learning how to make it into a really lovely pendant with a pearl, I have got an online course called Secrets of the Ocean, which is available for you to purchase, and then you can follow along on a series of bite-sized videos from the comfort of your own home. And the other thing is with this, when it's still wet, you might want to think about where you're going to hang your jump ring in order, where you're going to put the jump ring in order to hang a chain, hang it off a chain. So you might want to, at this point, use a little, your cocktail stick again. And you would do it probably couple of millimeters, 2 to 3 millimeters from the edge, and just place the hole delicately into the position where you want it to hang. Slightly, so in order to make a hole. And then I have also got this handy tool here, which you can use once it's dry. It's just a drill bit that you use like so, in order to ensure that the hole is big enough to take your jump ring, because when you fire silver clay, it does decrease in size by 10%. So obviously that means that the hole will decrease by 10% as well. You can drill through once it's solid silver and make the hole bigger, but obviously it's much easier to do it before you've actually fired it and turned it to silver. And I will do another video showing you how to fire silver clay. So keep an eye out for that one. And if you'd like to get regular updates behind the scenes and just generally my creative musings, then you can join my creative newsletter, Notes from the Studio. And again, I will leave a link for you in the show notes so that you can join my newsletter.